Update: my dog attacked my stalker after he broke into my house. Now my sister-in-law says my dog is too dangerous to be around my niece. Feel like I'm going crazy. The conclusion I came to in all of this is that while my sister-in-law is well within her rights to protect her daughter, she went about it in a way that disrespected me, both as a friend and as a victim of a very recent violent attack. Both my parents and her parents live locally and babysit all the time. She and my brother could have easily dropped my niece off with them and came to visit. It probably would have been a while before I even noticed my niece wasn't coming around, at which point I would have been in a better place and more understanding that she was uncomfortable with her daughter around Thor. Regardless of what some people said about how my sister-in-law and brother don't owe me anything and all their allegiance goes to their daughter, I simply do not feel that way. We were extremely close before this happened. I was always there for them, and would literally drop plans to babysit my niece if my brother and sister-in-law needed a night to themselves. The very least they could have done for me, after I was almost stolen and unalived, is try to find some compromise. We went from seeing each other 3 times a week to pretty much not seeing each other at all. Even if they weren't okay with me crating the dog, they could have easily dropped their daughter off with grandma and grandpa for a few hours so I wouldn't feel completely isolated. I also have a yard, so they could have come over with her and we all could have hung out outside, while Thor stayed inside. I've been upset about this for a while, but wasn't sure if I was right to be upset until so many people echoed that sentiment, so I appreciate it. I invited my brother and sister-in-law over. I promised it would only be an hour or 2 and insisted they leave my niece with my parents, and tried to lay all this out without being confrontational or acting like a jerk. To my surprise, my brother and sister-in-law had no real understanding that I've been having a difficult time. They thought I was basically fine and everything in my life was more or less back to normal now that my stalker is in jail. I didn't get into it in my previous post, but during the year that I was stalked, I worked really hard to not show many outward signs of fear. I even made jokes about having a stalker. I knew people wouldn't want to hang out with someone who was constantly going on and on about some bad thing that was going on in their life, and I didn't want to be that person who was perpetually in crisis. And more than that, I just didn't want to always be thinking and talking about having a stalker. I wanted to not think about it as much as possible. So I guess I might have come off as unaffected by the whole thing. I'm not sure if I totally buy that they didn't know I was going through something traumatic and that it was taking a huge toll on my mental state. I mean, I got a gun and paid for tactical training. I bought a home security system. I got active in self-defense classes and strength training, things that I previously had no interest in. Even if I wasn't walking around telling everyone how scared I was, I think anyone would have been able to tell. Plus, who just brushes off having their house broken into in the middle of the night? It seems crazy and they don't seem so emotionally unintelligent that they'd think that. But both my brother and sister-in-law did apologize for being insensitive, and when I pressed my sister-in-law on why crating the dog isn't good enough, she eventually relented and said that it would be fine. It probably helped that the entire time they were over, Thor was asleep and loudly snoring in his crate. The paranoid part of me is convinced they just don't want to deal with me in a fragile state, made up an excuse about my dog, and are now just going to come up with some other excuse about why they can't see me. I invited them over for dinner in a few days and they're coming, so I guess I'll just have to see from there. I can't stress enough that these used to be my best friends, and I'm heartbroken to have not had their support. I've been trying to rely on my friends more now, and thankfully they've all been really supportive. I'm really lucky that this happened during the pandemic, because nobody is getting frustrated with me that I've basically refused to leave the house for a month. They're all perfectly happy to pick up takeout and come over to watch TV for the 5th night in a row. In other news, yesterday I left my dog at home and drove around my block alone. I was shaking the whole time but I did it. I keep trying to remind myself that I spent a whole year fighting back even though I was utterly terrified. I can't just lay down and die now that I'm so close to getting my life back.